Hello everyone. Now let's unlock another crucial layer, which is the Postman headers. In any request you see the headers here, and headers are essential metadata sent with every API request and received with every API response. As you can see, headers in the request and response. Understanding how to use HTTP headers in Postman is vital for everything from authentication to content negotiation and caching. They carry crucial information about the request or response itself, but not the data payload. So you can imagine, think of headers like the envelope of a letter. The letter itself is the request body, that is our JSON or form data, but the envelope tells you who it's from, who it's for, and what type of letter it is. That's what headers do for APIs. Let's start by looking at the two main types: request headers and response headers. Request headers are sent by your client, which in this case is Postman, and the request headers are sent along with our request to the server. They provide the server with the information about what the client wants or expects and details about the request being sent. Request headers are then sent back by the server to the client, which is Postman. So these, you can see the response headers. After the processing, this is coming back to us from the server. Response headers are sent back by the server to your client, that is Postman, after the server processes the request. They provide information about the response itself, the server, caching instructions, and much more. So let's dive into some common and very important request headers you will use, and how to uh, use them in Postman. First, in the request header, I am going to let's take a look at the popular header called the content type. You can see here the content type, and this content type is a very common and important request header, and this tells the server what type of data you are sending in the body. For example, in this request we are sending a JSON content in the body, so our header should have this content length with the value, content type with the value application/JSON. So this helps the server to identify what type of media you are sending in the request body. So this is one of the most common body, which is the JSON content, or you can send a file, a binary file. In that case, the content type changes to application/PDF or other file types that you may have. Now, the next important and common header is accept. Accept in this case is */*. So this tells the server what media types the client, that is Postman, is able to accept in the response. So accept application/JSON. If you have something like, let me fix this application. So if you have application/JSON here, then what it means is that the server should send the response in a JSON format only. But since we have the accept as */*, that means this Postman client is telling the server that when I put this post request, I can accept the response in any format. So it's telling the server that you can send the response in any format. I don't care. I'm not very strict about it. So that's what this means. So the server can send in many formats like JSON or XML, and the accept header helps negotiate that. Then comes one of the most important thing, header called the header key called the authorization. What is authorization? We'll dive much deeper into this topic of authentication in the very next video, but for now, know that the authorization header is where your security credentials usually go. And another common header is the user agent. And the user agent, this in the header identifies the client application or the operating system that is making the request. In our case, the client that is making the request is Postman, and you can see the format as postman slash x.y.z. This is very important for servers so that they can tailor the responses back based on the client. And another common notable header is the cache control. What is cache control? As you can see, it is added to the header. When you add this to the header, and it tells it is about the caching behavior. So it tells the client and any other intermediate caches, like if you can have proxy servers. So it tells those proxy servers that how the response should be cached, whether the response should not be cached, which is the default, or it should expire after some time, or if it should be revalidated. For example, here the cache control is no cache. This instructs client, that is the postman, not to cache the response. And now let's see how to add these in Postman. As you can see, these are already there. If they are not there, when you can add them when you create a request like get, and you see the headers here, and you can hide the auto generated header by clicking the headers. Some headers are these are already added by Postman. As you can see, the cache control defaults to no cache, and the user agent is the postman that is sending and accepts any response from the server in any format, whether it's JSON or XML. And it also says other things like the authorization. In this case, you can dive deep, but for now, these are already there. Also, you can disable or enable header by clicking these checkboxes. For example, the user agent, you don't need to send this information. This is not required. So if you uncheck it, these headers will not be sent in the request. But there are some things that we cannot uh, control, which are these cache control. These are read only, and if I do a bulk edit, you can edit them here, and the auto generated headers are not visible in bulk edit. So you have seen some of these headers already appear here. These are preset, automatically added by Postman with the default values. These are the default headers behind the scenes, like host and its own user agent. So you can inspect these like this by opening the Postman console at the bottom of the Postman interface before sending the request. So this console shows you what you are the exact request is sent, including all the headers and the response received. And speaking of responses, let's look at the response headers. As you can see here, after you send a request, the request is processed and the server returns the success status code. And also in the response, you can see the headers sent by the server. Common response headers include the content type, which is the response that we got, and the server says the response is of a JSON type. So the content type is application JSON, and the cassette is UTF-8. So this is the content type. And it also sends other information like the date, the cache control, expires -1. I believe this is no expiration date, and many other things like the server itself, the information about the server. And these provide valuable information how the server processed your request and how and what to expect. So understanding headers is fundamental for troubleshooting API issues, handling authentication, and managing caching. So they are the silent workhorses of web communication. In our very next video, we are going to take a look at what we learned about the authorization and dive much deeper into API authentication in Postman. All about we will learn about the bearer tokens, basic authorization, basic auth, and API keys. This is where you learn to secure your API requests. If this video helped you understand Postman headers, please smash that like button, subscribe for more in-depth Postman tutorials, and check out the full Postman tutorial series playlist here. See you in the next one.